Chapter 55. It was almost an hour before Siddle remembered the website. She opened it and the first thing she did was read a series of messages from the person who had fixed the game for her. 3 consecutive messages were all demanding money. Siddle, she suddenly remembered that she seemed to have forgotten about this person. She opened her account and confirmed the transfer. Only then did Siddle discover that there was something different about this website. When she posted the job ad before, she had to pay 40% of the $50,000 in advance. It seemed that her account level was too low and the amount of money she entered was too large, leading to such a high prepayment percentage. Siddle skimmed through a few more posts and suddenly discovered that this seemed to be the rumored black website. There was a post in the urgent section with the same commission amount as hers. Siddle clicked on it and was surprised to find that the content was a transaction for transporting a large amount of drugs. After carefully reading the pinning rules on the forum, it turned out that the tenant and the applicant accounts did not look the same. Previously, the number next to the username of the person who had just fixed the game for her had a black avatar and no ID, which was 7. This meant that he was the lowest level applicant type on the forum and had almost never completed any work. Now Siddle understood the meaning of the first sentence that person sent her. Perhaps he had mistakenly thought that she wanted to. She looked at the message box on the computer screen. After receiving the money, the other party's avatar had darkened. He had logged out. After receiving the payment from the website, the fingers of the young man in the black hoodie paused on the keyboard. He logged out of the website, cleared the history, stood up, took out the white plastic lollipop from his mouth, and casually threw it into the trash can beside him. The lollipop had already melted in his mouth. But there was still some sweetness left, so he couldn't bear to throw it away and kept it in his mouth for several hours. But now that he had money again, the normally calm and indifferent young man's eyes rarely showed joy, although he quickly suppressed that feeling. Before going to the pharmacy, he should still go to the convenience store to buy a pack of candy. It had been 2 months since the game ended. On the forest path covered with dry yellow leaves, there were 2 or 3 groups of people scattered. Siddle held a Japanese dictionary in her hand and was seriously memorizing vocabulary. Since the events in the game ended, although Siddle was fine, she had been obsessed with Japan. If Freya was the reverse world of a real village in Japan, then how big would the world inside Japan be? Siddle thought of the endless darkness that couldn't be illuminated by a flashlight and quietly made a decision. She would never set foot in Japan unless it was necessary. But that said, because she remembered the embarrassing scene of using translation software to play games at that time, she was still willing to give up her laziness, quickly graduated from the Chinese class after passing the Chinese teacher's evaluation, and joined the Japanese class. After Jacqueline cleared up the misunderstanding with her, she stopped pretending to be arrogant and domineering. The relationship between Jacqueline and the other 2 girls in the dormitory also gradually eased. Everything seemed to be gradually returning to normal. Until today, Siddle received a call from Christy. After meeting this girl at the orphanage, the 2 of them had never lost contact. At first, Christy sought Siddle out because of the petition to free Hannibal, then gradually developed into 2 friends who would talk a few words to each other when they were free. Siddle never thought that she would call her to complain about this. About Christy's father's remarriage. To be honest, I don't like that woman at all. Of course I know that after my father marries her, I'll have to call her aunt. Don't get me wrong, Siddle, I'm not the kind of person who unreasonably holds back from my father's remarriage. But I don't like her anyway. Maybe it's because our personalities don't match. I think I'll come home less after they get married, and the dormitory in school isn't bad either. She rambled on and on, but Siddle still put on her headphones and listened patiently. It wasn't until the end that Christy made her request. I want to ask, she hesitated, but in the end, she said, can you come to their wedding? My father doesn't want to see me and my stepmother Judy at odds, but I don't really want to invite my friends from school to the wedding, anyway. If she doesn't cling to my father, it's not that I discriminate against other people's backgrounds, it's just, Christy sighed. Siddle hesitated for a moment. After a while, she still chose to refuse. Sorry, Christy, I'm a bit busy these days and can't attend your father's wedding. Can you send my sincere blessings to him? If you don't mind. All right, seemingly not expecting Siddle to refuse, Christy sighed dejectedly, then I'll find someone else. I've already accepted your blessings, I'll pass them on. Siddle hung up the phone, and by this time she had already reached the school gate. The three girls from the same dormitory were waiting for her by the side of the road. This was their first dinner since their dormitory relationship had cooled down. Siddle put away her dictionary and walked quickly forward, smiling. Let's go, she said. In the middle of the bustling commercial street, it was not until someone stuffed a flyer into her hand that Siddle noticed the man in black who had appeared beside her without her knowing. She was a little startled and lowered her head to look at the flyer in her hand. Jacqueline, Louise, and the others on the side also came over. It was a flyer advertising a luxury cruise ship. Below it was a detailed introduction of the time and location of the free cruise. Oh my, Jacqueline couldn't help but exclaim, this cruise ship looks really nice. Siddle didn't say anything. She flipped the flyer over and saw an advertisement for a hotel that offered a limited number of free rooms. The flyer introduced the hotel's 10th anniversary event. Come to the hotel's front desk to draw lots and have a chance to stay for free, limited opportunities, random rooms. This hotel event seems interesting, Margot interjected, looking at Siddle curiously. Should we go there to try our luck and see if we win? Siddle, are we so poor that we have to take advantage of the opportunity to stay in a hotel? She glanced strangely at her friends around her, then tore the flyer into pieces, stuffed it into the trash can by the side of the road, and said calmly, it's just a public marketing method of the business. Margot said angrily, I just want to go and see how our luck is, not to stay in a hotel for free. Jacqueline nodded in agreement. Siddle was dealing with the girls' playfulness, responding while looking back. The man who had been standing there handing out flyers to her had disappeared. Her expression was as usual, turning away to hide the gloom in her blue eyes under her long, thick eyelashes. Walking on the street, her left eye suddenly became hot. Siddle knew something was coming. She scanned the surroundings, resolutely pulling the girls to turn to the left. I heard the food street here is very delicious. Mainly because there was a person with only the upper body and a crushed head lying on the street on the right. Several beautifully dressed young girls passed by and Siddle happened to hear the news broadcast on someone's cell phone. A patient of XX mental hospital escaped from the court on November 1st. This patient is very dangerous. Please pay attention. A mental patient escaped. Siddle noticed this sentence, subconsciously picked up her phone and started to flip through the news. She quickly saw the related articles. A murderer was imprisoned in a mental hospital for 15 years since he was a child for killing his sister. A few days ago, the court gave the reason that because of the spirit of humanism, they believed that the mental patient still had a chance to change and start a new life, so they released him. But before he could go to court to defend himself, he took the hospital's private car and fled. He has not been found yet. Siddle. So what exactly is in the minds of those people in court? What is scarier than murderers and evil spirits is a group of people that humans call idiots. She indifferently closed the news page. After Margot bought some water and returned, she looked at the girls and said, let's finish eating and go home, don't go out tonight. The streets at night are not very safe. Margot, Louise, Jacqueline and the others did not object much. With Siddle's persistence, they finished dinner and returned to school together when the lights in the city were still bright. Before falling asleep, Siddle wished her three roommates good night as usual. Halloween had just happened not long ago. That day, the school held a special event. Even Siddle, who was always considered arrogant and unsociable by her classmates, received a lot of candy. But she didn't like sweets, so she brought them all back to the dormitory. A pile of colorful candy was carefully wrapped in candy wrappers and placed in a drawer. In the room, except for Margot, who also didn't like sweets, the other two girls were quite happy. The festive atmosphere had not yet dissipated. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl stood in front of the window, looking at the city with bright lights in the distance. The bright lights reflected in her clear blue eyes like shining jade. She quietly looked at the bustling streets with a calm expression. But as soon as she thought of the lunatics still wandering around the city, she began to silently curse the people in the court. A bunch of idiots who grew up without brains. Someone called out to her from behind. Siddle turned around and saw Louise wearing a bare pajama, her gentle eyes revealing a sweet smile. Go to bed early. The phone vibrated with a message. Siddle looked down and saw the photo Christy sent. In the church, a middle-aged man and a woman in a wedding dress were walking hand in hand. Christy added a sentence. I have passed your blessing to my father. He said thank you for your wishes. He hopes to invite your friend, who is you, to dinner together. Siddle thought for a moment and replied. Thank you for your kindness. After a while, she added another sentence. Please pay attention to safety recently, don't go out alone. It seems that a murderer escaped, and he hasn't been found yet. Before falling asleep, Siddle put her cell phone next to her pillow. Speaking of which, today was also a magical day. It seemed that this world was not only strange, Siddle had actually felt its dangers and invisible fears since she was 7 years old. But now she was used to it. She had even reached a level of proficiency and fluency. It was just that her temper seemed to be getting worse. Except for a few girls in the dormitory and Christy, Siddle had not had any other social relationships for a long time. This could not be blamed on her. Mainly because socializing was too dangerous, and the thoughts of teenage children were often quite dangerous and unpleasant. Siddle believed that she could stop all unnecessary social activities, in order to survive better in this dangerous world. However, Siddle did not expect that even though she did not attend Christy's father's remarriage, she would still meet Christy's stepmother Judy 6 years later.